Pickhardt, and today I'd like to talk to you about food insecurity in the U.S. and the cognitive effects of nutrition. Now, many of you have probably heard of nature versus nurture, the question of whether our environment or our genetics influence us more in shaping who we are. But one thing that you probably don't know is just how big of an impact our environment actually has on us, namely in the form of nutrition. In the U.S., 1 in 5 children live in food insecure households, meaning that they live each day uncertain of when their next meal will be. But what if I told you that food insecurity actually goes beyond just empty shelves and rumbling stomachs? It actually has the ability to change the way a person's brain works. So what I want to show you today are 2 MRI images, one of a healthy child's brain and one of a malnourished child's brain. Now, if you look at the healthy child's brain, you can see these large dark spaces in the center, and these are ventricles, which are cavities in the brain that are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Now you can see the same thing on the malnourished child's brain, except the ventricles are visibly larger. You can also see that the malnourished child's brain has a thinner cortex and more space between the skull and the brain itself. And here's another example. You can see the same thing, in large ventricles, a thinner cortex, and more space between the skull and the brain. The healthy brain appears to be larger, denser, and more developed than the malnourished child's brain. Now, how does this happen? And what does this mean for someone who doesn't get adequate nutrition? Well, we can see from the 2 images that nutrition doesn't just fuel the brain. It actually physically shapes how it develops and functions. And in order to understand this, I want to show you a diagram of the brain, specifically of the regions that are most affected by malnutrition. So if you look in the front, you can see the prefrontal cortex. Now this is the region of the brain that's responsible for impulse control, decision-making, and problem-solving. And this region is sensitive. Without enough iron, proteins, and healthy fats, it develops more slowly, which can make problem-solving, concentration, and planning that much harder. Then you can see the hippocampus. Now this is the brain center for memory and learning. And poor nutrition can actually cause this region to shrink, which leads to problems in learning, remembering, and handling stress. Then next you can see the cerebellum, and the cerebellum is the part of the brain that's responsible for coordination and movement. And it develops very quickly early on in childhood. So malnutrition during that period can lead to long-lasting delays in motor skills, so things like balance, posture, and speech. Next we have white matter, and white matter is the brain's communication network. And it relies on healthy fats and micronutrients in order to form myelin, which is the insulation that allows brain signals to travel quickly. When nutrition is low, the white matter actually shrinks, which slows down communication across the brain. And then finally we have the corpus callosum, and this is the part of the brain that connects the right and left hemispheres. And poor nutrition causes this area to shrink, become smaller and less efficient, which leads to problems in high cognitive skills, so things like language, coordination, and problem solving. But food insecurity isn't only about nutrition. It also leads to chronic stress, which can slow down development in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, and also disrupt white matter connections. So we can see how nutrition directly affects different regions of the brain. And while there's no one region of the brain that's responsible for saying something like getting a good grade on a math test, when children don't have consistent access to nutritious food, their attention, memory, emotional control, and motor skills are all affected. Now, as the gap in brain development widens, the gap in academic achievement widens too. We see that children who grow up in food insecure households are more likely to be absent from school, commonly score lower on tests, especially in areas like reading and math, and are more likely to struggle in their social and emotional skills. But the effects don't just end in childhood. Going into adulthood, they also have reduced economic mobility, lower graduation rates, and increased risk of chronic and mental health disorders. But why do we care? Why is the food insecurity crisis so important on a community, statewide, and national level right now? Well, when asked this question, some people would say that it's about stability. What happens when too many people go hungry, like in the food riots in 2008? Others would say that it's about basic human rights. And I think that a lot of you can think back to your family, whether it's your grandparents, your parents, or you, to a time when food is scarce. Food insecurity is everywhere. But one of the most important reasons to remember is that we are feeding the next generation of police officers of people who will run our country in the years to come. And we want to give them the best possible chance of being successful. So how do we do this? Well, this is not a problem of resources. We waste billions of pounds of food each year that can be distributed to families through supporting school and community-based aid programs, and by advocating for government-based aid programs like SNAP and WIC that together feed millions of families across the U.S. Food insecurity is not just a hunger crisis. It's a crisis that occurs in the brains of 14 million children who live without access to consistent food, changing the structures that shape how someone thinks, learns, and feels. But one of the most important aspects of the brain is its plasticity. Children's brains have the ability to bounce back from malnutrition. All we have to do is take the first steps. So I encourage you, when you leave here today, to get involved. Volunteer, donate, share resources. Remember that you're not just helping to give someone a free meal. You could actually be helping to change the course of their entire life. Thank you.